Right now, the fight we have all been waiting for is happening, Gojo versus Sukuna. And many fans like you and I have placed our bets on who we think will win, because all we know is that the outcome of this fight determines everything. If Gojo wins, then all is good, as he himself combined with the rest of the cast will easily be able to defeat the remaining villains like Kenjaku and Arame. But what if Gojo loses? Would Yuda, Maki, and Hakari be enough to save the Jujutsu Society? We saw Kenjaku say that if Gojo loses, the only opening that the main cast has to beat Sukuna would be right after the fight. So the others from the Jujutsu High, particularly the heavy hitters led by Akotsu, can't afford to leave the battlefield for today. So Kenjaku is saying right here that even if Gojo loses to Sukuna, he might be left in such a weakened state that Yuda, Maki, and Hakari will be able to defeat him. And if you notice, Kenjaku calls the three of them the heavy hitters, because right now, Yuda has been stated multiple times to be the second strongest modern sorcerer right after Gojo. And then we know that Akari has statements about being stronger than Yuda when he is on a roll. And as for Maki, she has now gained a power-up that puts her on the level of Toji, and she also has a sword that can cut through anything and hit the soul directly. So it's no surprise why Kenjaku says that the three of them are the main fighting force for the Jujutsu Society. When it comes to Yuda, we know that there's been this narrative buildup of a fight between him and Kenjaku. And with the recent turn of events, it's not completely clear if we'll actually see that 1 versus 1 or not, because right now everything seems revolved around Gojo versus Sukuna and whether they'll have to jump Sukuna basically. And this is something that we've talked about before in Jujutsu Kaisen, where people get jumped. You know, it's like normal for sorcerers to get jumped. We saw that Mahito got jumped by Nanami and Yuji, and then we saw that Yuji and Todo jump Mahito and Shibuya. We saw Ryu and Uro jump Yuta. So there's just this thing in JJK where people just jump other people. So of course it comes as no surprise, especially with Sukuna being as powerful as he is, that Yuda, Maki, and Akari will probably end up jumping him. And when it comes to statements about Yuda calling him the second strongest modern sorcerer, there's plenty of reasons why this is the case. Yuda is known as having a boundless curse energy amount. This has been referenced all the way back in Volume 0, where Geto said that the reason he wanted Rika so much is because she was a cursed spirit of endless curse energy. And then we see that when Yuta is fighting Ryu and Uro says that she can't even see the bottom of Yuta's curse energy. So we know that Yuta throughout the story has this buildup of unending curse energy amount, but that's not all he can do. We also know that Yuta can copy curse techniques, and that has become like the staple for Yuta. And that is also one of the reasons that Geto back in Volume 0 said that he was lucky that he came to fight Yuta when he did, because Geto says that if Yuta had gained mastery over his techniques, then he would have been a real problem. And this is because imagine combining an endless amount of curse energy with the ability to copy curse techniques. This means that you can just keep copying curse techniques and keep using them as long as you want to, because you have all the curse energy in the world to do so. And these are just a couple of the reasons why Yuta has become known as the second strongest modern sorcerer. It is very impressive that he was crowned a special grade his first year in the Jujutsu Society. Now yes, this was because of Rika, but now in the present day he has mastery over Rika to where he can fight on his own in base. And there is one misconception about Yuta and his curse energy, is that he has all of that curse energy in his base form. It's just that Rika comes along and refills him back to 100%. We know that when Ryu was fighting against Yuta on the rooftop, he said that he felt like he was knocking against a massive water tank every time he punched Yuta. And remember when Uro said that Yuta's curse energy was bottomless? She said this when Yuta didn't even have Rika out. Yuta on his own is on that level now. He was able to match both Uro and Ryu without even pulling out Rika. The problem came when he started to run out of curse energy, and that is where Rika comes in. She becomes the battery for Yuta, and once she refilled him back with the curse energy, he was able to go on, copy Uro's curse technique, and beat Ryu, which is another great thing about Yuta. He was able to copy Uro's curse technique mid-fight and then use it at the end of his fight with Ryu to catch him off guard and hit him with his own blast. So we know that not only does Yuta have the ability to copy curse techniques, he also is known for having a boundless amount of curse energy. He's also just very smart and adaptable in combat. If you look at adaptability as a statistic, Yuta's curse technique allows him to have some of the greatest adaptability in the series, because he can take what you have and use it against you, and you don't ever know if he's copied it when he's copied it or when he's going to use it against you. And just him having this technique adds another element in a fight. You can always be worried that he has or hasn't copied your curse technique, and he may have never copied your curse technique in the fight, but for the simple fact that you know he can copy your curse technique, it is in the back of your mind the entire time you're fighting him. So Yuda's curse technique combined with all of his curse energy just allows for him to be a devastating fighter, and he's also just very smart with combat, and we've seen plenty of times where he was able to work on his feet and have great adaptability, so it's no surprise that Yuta Okkotsu is leading the heavy hitters. And when you look at Akari, he is arguably the most entertaining character in Jujutsu Kaisen. His ability literally revolves around gambling. He takes risk in order to hit a jackpot and fight against an opponent with two main abilities that he gets from hitting a jackpot. One of the main things that he gains is for 4 minutes and 11 seconds, he has automatic reverse curse technique running around his body. So no matter what happens to him, say he loses an arm, which is what happens when he's fighting Kashimo, the arm would just regenerate back in seconds. We saw that when Kashimo hit him with two lethal attacks, one where he took Hakari's arm off and the other where he took Hakari's side off, both of these instances Hakari just healed right back up after hitting a jackpot because of the automatic reverse curse technique that was flowing throughout his body. Now we know that it does say that he is effectively immortal, but it isn't literally immortality, because as long as you take the head off of Akari, then he will just die. He can't regenerate his head. We know this because reverse curse technique comes from the head, and Kashimo says that if he can just remove Hakari's head or smush it enough, that the reverse curse technique won't flow from his head throughout his body and Hakari will just die. But this isn't all Hakari gains in his jackpot state anyways. We know that once Akari hits a jackpot, he also gets an infinite amount of curse energy to use at his disposal. The curse energy is so strong around his body that Kashimo's curse energy trait, where it shocks opponents while he fights them, can't even affect Hakari because of how much curse energy is around his body. Now I do want to say one thing, infinite curse energy does not mean infinite curse energy output, and it's not like Hakari has curse techniques to put the output into anyway. We know that Hakari is a brawler, just hands and feet, so this infinite curse energy that he gets is more so used to coat his body so he can just keep fighting forward, and anytime he takes a lethal blow, he just heals right back from it. We also know that Akari's kicks are so strong that when Kashimo got kicked when he couldn't protect himself with curse energy, he was in deep pain, and he said that he couldn't take any of Akari's kicks while he didn't have any curse energy to defend from it. Now, of course, this is expected because they were relative to each other when they both were using all of their curse energy, so it does make sense that while Kashimo's curse energy is down, he can't take a hit at all. But these two abilities, one of them being an infinite amount of curse energy to use for 4 minutes and 11 seconds, and also gaining the ability of automatic reverse curse technique so your body is in a constant state of healing, makes Hakari one of the most broken characters in Jujutsu Kaisen. And we also know that this comes about through him opening a domain expansion. Now, there have been some translation problems in the past. Apparently, it wasn't included in the official release, but the translation is supposed to say that Akari's domain is especially strong in tug-of-war battles, and that this is a trade-off for the fact that he has no lethal sure hit in his domain expansion. You know, this does make sense because everybody else's domain has a lethal sure hit, except for a couple characters like Higuruma and Mio, who has the sumo domain. You know, Jogo has the rock as a sure hit, Dagon has the fish as his, Mahito has idle transfiguration, Kinjaku has gravity, and so on. We know that since Akari doesn't have a lethal sure hit, his domain instead is especially strong in tug-of-war battles, basically meaning that you will probably lose a domain clash to Akari, and that he will always be allowed to play his game, get lucky, and hit a jackpot. And that is one thing about Hakari's character as well that some people actually disagree with or think is sort of BS, is that Hakari is just lucky. Some people did actually have a problem with the fact that Kashimo was getting the better of Hakari. It did seem that Kashimo had the upper hand. He had landed about 3 lethal attacks on Akari, but each time he just hit a jackpot, came back, and won the fight. But I will say this, it just isn't character for Akari to get lucky. So I wouldn't be mad if Akari does get lucky some more in the future of the series. And then we have Maki, who has made crazy development as a sorcerer. We know that back in Goodwill, she was a low-grade sorcerer who nobody really had respect for. The only people who did care for Maki were her friends, but we know that the Zenin family, along with the rest of the Jujutsu Society, basically held no respect for Maki because she couldn't even see cursed spirits, and she also couldn't use any cursed techniques. Now of course we know that she underwent a crazy change right before she massacred the entire Zenin clan. Maki now has a heavenly restriction which puts her curse energy amount at 0, and in exchange she gains an amazing physical body that is faster, all of her 5 sensors are finely tuned, and she can see curses now without the need of glasses. And we know that recently she underwent a mental change, because even though at first she did gain the Toji body back when she fought against Naoya for the first time, she hadn't fully realized the body that she was in. We know this because when Naoya came back as a cursed spirit, he was actually blitzing Maki so badly that just him moving at Mach 3 was enough to overwhelm her and hit her into the ground. And the entire time that Naoya is blitzing her, Maki keeps saying that there's something that she's missing, there's something that she can't see that Toji was able to see. And we know that when the sumo guy came around, Mio took her into his domain expansion, and as they were playing sumo, Mio explained to her that she needed to change her mindset in order to bring out all of her power. And we know that this is a reoccurring theme within Jujutsu Kaisen. We know that mindset has something to do deeply with characters bringing out all of their potential, especially in the case of someone like Maki or Toji. If you look back at what happened when Megami opened up his domain for the first time, he had to have a change of mindset and then he was able to open up his domain expansion. And if you look at when Hanami was fighting against Yuji and Todo, after Hanami changed his mindset, he grew stronger in battle as well. And throughout the entirety of Shibuya, Yuji keeps resolving himself, changing his mindset, and he just keeps getting stronger throughout Shibuya. And Sukuna even tells it to Jogo right before he burns and kills him. He says that Jogo should have burnt everything to a cinder, and that if Jogo had just had an overwhelming sense of self, he actually had the potential to grow to the heights of Satoru Gojo. But because Jogo did not have this selfishness about him, he fell behind. And after Yuda got done fighting against Ryu and Uro, Ryu says, "You're the one who reached your limit. I've seen it all before. Sorcerers, cursed spirits, it doesn't matter. The only ones who are able to transcend beyond being merely strong are those with an overwhelming sense of self and a complete disregard for others. Natural disasters." So we know that there's this recurring theme throughout Jujutsu Kaisen where you need to either be selfish or just have a simple change of mindset, and you will finally be able to bring out all of your strength. And this is exactly what happened with Maki. After Maki comes out of the domain expansion after running sumo with Mio, everybody says it's like she underwent a massive change. It's not like she went inside the domain and hit weights and got physically bigger. All she did was just change her mindset. Her body stayed the same, but she came out of that domain expansion much stronger and much faster, and she was actually able to react to Naoya, to where even him moving at those high speeds were not enough to deal with Maki anymore. And after exercising Naoya with the split soul katana, she was now finally stated equal to Toji. Now when Maki actually stabs Naoya through the back, we get an explanation for what the sword can do. It says, "The sword Mai left behind is a replica of the cursed tool Soul Liberation Blade. It ignores the hardness of everything and cuts the soul directly. But in order to use it at its full potential, the wielder must have a pair of eyes that can see the souls of inanimate objects." And because of this, Maki was able to cut Naoya and kill him. And we also know that Maki was just able to enter Naoya's domain expansion and the sure hit didn't affect her because Maki has no curse energy. So this means that a domain expansion from Kenjaku, for example, would not be effective against Maki, as she would just run directly towards Kenjaku and the sure hit wouldn't recognize her. But for Sukuna, Maki would still get hit, because we know that Sukuna has 2 attacks, Dismantle and Cleave. Cleave attacks anything with curse energy, and Dismantle attacks even inanimate objects like buildings, so Maki would still be cut if she was to ever get caught inside Sukuna's domain expansion. But for all of the things that Maki has, her crazy speed, her blade that can cut through anything and hit the soul, combined with the fact that domains don't work on her, it is no surprise that she is one of the heavy hitters. And this is one thing about the blade, durability doesn't matter. It says that the blade can cut through anything. So if she can get a clean hit with the blade on Kenjaku or Sukuna, it would do serious damage to them. And one more thing about the blade is that we're not even actually sure whether or not he can heal from attacks from the blade. Maki even questions this herself when she fights against Sukuna. She says if he's not gonna die, does that mean he can heal the wounds from the Soul Liberation Blade with reverse curse technique? So it still is up in the air whether or not Sukuna can heal from the Soul Liberation Blade, but If he can't, then of course this would be one of the main tools used to defeat Sukuna if they were to jump him after the fight with Gojo. Another funny thing about Kenjaku calling Yuta, Maki, and Akari the heavy hitters is that he says since they'll be mainly focused on Sukuna after the fight, he himself is free to move as he pleases. So it's just funny how Kenjaku is saying if they were in his way, he wouldn't be able to move as he pleases, and he would probably be screwed if he were to encounter them. They could just beat him up. Which is one thing that I'm sure we're all on the same page about at this point in the story, is that even though Kenjaku is strong, Yuda, Maki, and Hakari all at once would just be too much for Kenjaku to deal with. So the only big threat for them right now is Sukuna. And although we don't know the state of Sukuna after his fight with Gojo, whether Gojo just wins, or whether Gojo loses but he gets Sukuna half health, or maybe Gojo loses and Sukuna is just nearly at full health. And there's even a possibility that Gojo loses, but Sukuna is so weak that the three of them can jump him and beat him up anyways. But the only way for us to know is to wait and see. With that being said, I want to thank you so much for reaching the end of the video. If you enjoyed, then please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as I do post on different topics that you guys give me and a few that I come up with on my own. Thank you for watching. See you next time.